Good morning, lovely people, and welcome to our MOOC. I am Mark Prahalad, and I'm here with Sarah Romero. Today, this MOOC will be on Microsoft Office as a data source. Today's topics will be requirement structure for Microsoft Word and Excel, test case design from Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft Excel as a data sheet. You are all natively muted already. This is because there are so many of you and it would be just a mess of words if you were all unmuted. If you have questions, please use the chat box. We would love to hear your questions, and we have people on site ready to answer them, or we'll save them to the Q&A part where we will answer as many as we can get, or as many as we can. Most of the questions, or all the questions that we will answer, will be only the ones pertaining to the topic at hand. The session is being recorded and will be uploaded within the next few days. Thank you, and I hand you off to Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody. So the way that I'm going to do this session is I'm going to go through some PowerPoint slides to explain to you kind of the different topics, as Mark mentioned before, how all of these different things work in Tosca on a theoretical level, and then once I'm done with that, we'll jump into Tosca and I'll demonstrate them all for you. As Mark said, we have 4 main topics, and the first one that we're going to be going over is using Microsoft Word headings for requirements. So these are the heading styles, or the styles from Microsoft Word. And so it's very simple, actually. Basically, you have to create a Word document which contains a structure of requirement sets. So you would and requirements. The requirement set will be the file itself, and then the requirements will be the headings underneath. You can use Word heading styles heading 1 to heading 9, or up to heading 9. So you can use up to 9 of those heading settings, and then you have to number them using the outline 1, 1.1, 1.1.1, so all of the different chapters, and that will designate at each heading level which sub-requirements should be imported. Okay, and then the last row in the Word file should be blank, and the reference document, so the Word document you've created, will actually be attached to the requirement set. So in Tosca, it will be attached to the requirement set so that you can open up the Word document, because what will be imported is just the requirement headings, and any other information that you have contained in the Word document you can open up from that attachment. This is how it will look. So as I said, I'll demonstrate it, but this is kind of the example that I'll be showing you. So on the left-hand side, you can see the Word document, how it should be structured. You can see that the 1, 2, and 3 headings here, that's heading style 1. Those are the main highest level requirements. Then the next level requirement, heading 2, these are the next level of sub-requirements. And you can see there's 2 lowest level ones, so 2.1.1 or 1.1.1, and these are the lowest level requirements. Sorry, just here and there. Okay, so they will be imported the way that you create the document, and you can see that the name of the requirement set is actually going to come from the name of the file itself. So the Word document I created, this is the name. Okay. And then you can see the corresponding heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3, and then you could go on from there. Important here is that you have to make sure in the options of Tosca that you have it set so that it recognizes the name of your headings. So if you're using English Word and you're using the default styles, they'll be called heading 1, heading 2, so the prefix there is heading. You'll have to set that in the options of Tosca. If you're using another language, or if you're using another prefix for your headings, you'll have to set that, and I will show you that when I go into Tosca. What are the steps for actually doing this? Basically, I have to create the requirement folder in which the structure should be created, so where I want to import this requirement set from the Word document. And then it's really simple, actually. I just right-click on the folder and select Import Requirements from Word Captions. So that's going to be an option that comes up in the context menu. And then I select that, and it automatically imports the structure as I just showed you on the last slide. And the Word file will be attached to the requirements set. Okay, so that's pretty basic. The next topic is copying the structure from Microsoft Excel to the requirements section. So this is a similar concept that you have in Excel, the highest level requirements. So that's sort of like the heading 1 in the Word document. Then you have the next level requirements, which would be like heading 2 in the Word document, and then any later requirements. So here we have only 3 levels. You can have obviously as many levels as you need. And basically they have to be structured like this. So each level needs its own column, and each requirement belongs in its own row. And in order to copy those over into Tosca, all you have to do is copy and paste. But instead of using a simple paste, you'll actually be selecting either create folder structure if you're creating a folder structure in that section, or create requirement structure from clipboard if you're actually creating requirements. Okay, so this pasting in, if I go back to the last slide, this structure can be used as either a structure for the folders in the requirements section, okay, so layers of folders, or it can be used as structure for the requirements themselves, as you saw before with the word headings, okay? And you can decide simply by, when you go to paste, choosing one of these options, either to create the folder structure on a folder or to create the requirement structure from clipboard on a requirement set, okay? And again, I'll be showing you that when we go into Tosca. So this option to create the folder structure is actually a really useful tool, because it's not just in the requirements section that I can create the folder structure. I can use this option in all of the sections of Tosca. So one of the best practices you may have come across working in Tosca is the recommendation that you have a similar folder structure in each of the different sections. And this is really easy to do, because you can create the folder structure in Excel, copy it, and then paste it in using this option to create folder structure. And I'll show you how that works. You can do that in the test case design section, the requirements, test case, execution list section. All of them you can use with this create folder structure option. You can also use this to create an attribute structure in test case design. And the option then on a test sheet just changes from create folder structure to create element structure from clipboard. Okay. The next topic is using Excel with test case design. And there's 2 ways you can do this. You can do this with copy and paste, or you'll see, yeah, basically copy and paste. And you can also actually use or replace the test case design with Excel. So the first one, so the copy and paste option, as you can see, will basically replicate your Excel sheet inside the test case design section. This template here, so the structure for my Excel sheet, actually is provided with every download of Tosca. Okay, so every download of Tosca has this path. So you go to the Tricentis projects folder, and then the Tosca Commander folder template Okay, it looked like the sound stopped. Is it back on for everybody? Okay, great. As I said, you will receive this. Sorry about that. So as I said, you'll be able to follow this path wherever Tosca's downloaded, and you'll find a template, and the template will have this section for the objects or attributes, the domain, and then the different instances. So in each column is where you have the test case, and then each row is where you have each set of data for those test cases, okay? So here I have test case 1, and this now has the attributes and the different variances of the data for those attributes for each test case, okay? I know that for many people in Excel, when you create the test cases in Excel, you actually have the data in rows. So all that you have to remember is if you do have your data set up that way, you just simply have to transpose the data, which means to copy and paste it transposed, which will convert rows to columns and columns to rows, okay? So that's a simple function in Excel. And once you have that done, all you have to do is place it into the structure where you have, again, each attribute has its own, or each level of attributes has its own column. So you can see vehicle data, personal data, company data, all are the highest level of attributes and have their own column. Then the second column is the next level of attributes, and so on. And each attribute obviously has its own row. And for example, if make had sub-attributes, they would go between make and engine performance in column C. Okay? And then the data corresponding to each of those attributes belongs here in the under the corresponding test cases. Okay, so as I said, you can just go ahead and use that template that comes with Tosca. That's the easiest way. Each test case, as I said, requires its own column. Each attribute requires its own row in this format. And then you simply can select all, copy, and paste it into your test sheet. And all attributes and test cases and or instances in the test case design section and their corresponding values will all be brought over from the Excel sheet into test case design. The only thing, so this will only bring over attributes. Once you bring over the attributes, so I'll go up one more time. Once you've brought the attributes in, none of these are instances, but we know that, for example, with make, each different column, each different data variation here, so the different makes of cars, would be a different instance of that attribute. So on the lowest level here, we would just want to create instances from those attribute values, and that's a simple click of a button, so I'll demonstrate that as well. And the option for that is to create instances from values. Okay, so that's the only manual thing you have to do once you've dropped everything into Tosca. Okay, and the last of the 4 topics that we're covering is actually using Excel as a test sheet or in place of a test sheet. So in the last instance, we take all of our data from the Excel sheet, put it into Tosca, and then it can be stored in Tosca and managed and maintained within Tosca in the test case design section on a test sheet. If you're regularly getting data in Excel sheets and you don't always want to have to bring it over to the test case design section, obviously then you won't be able to maintain it within Tosca, but you can use your Excel sheets themselves as replacements basically for test sheets so that the Excel sheet is the data source rather than a test sheet in test case design. So basically in the same format, so it's important that I still have a Tosca readable format for my Excel sheet, which means test cases or instances in columns and attributes in rows. So best choice there is to use the template that's provided so that you make sure that you have it set up in the appropriate format. Then basically all you have to do is on your template, So when you want to actually link it to the Excel sheet as a data source, rather than dragging and dropping a test case design test sheet onto a template, you will select the option to link a data source to the template in the test case section, enter the file path to the Excel sheet, and then it's linked. And it will maintain that link, and you can enter values using Excel links and set conditions just like you would with a test sheet. The only thing, so one of the things, as I said, you won't then be able to maintain it within Tosca, the data set itself, because it will be actually in an Excel sheet. And what's very important to remember is that if you change the data, you have to reinstantiate the template instances just like you would with the test sheet, or the test cases that were created, the test case instances that were created from the template won't be updated. Okay, so that's important. Just like you would with a test sheet, every time you change something, every time you change the template or the data, you have to reinstantiate. You will have to do the same if you make any modifications to the Excel sheet. Okay, so I'm sure there are quite a few questions since I've just covered everything on a very theoretical level, not in Tosca. So now we'll go ahead and we'll jump into Tosca, and hopefully that clears up some of the questions that have been coming in. Okay. So here I have my Tosca workspace open. I'm currently in Tosca 10.1. Okay. The first thing I want to do is use a Word document to import my headings. So remember, this is the Word document that I showed you. I'll show you one more time, where you can see I'm using styles, so the word styles. And you can see the highest level requirements are heading style 1. The next level requirements are heading style 2. Okay, and then so on. So then the next level is heading 3. And the numbering is this format here. Okay, so you have this format that goes 1, 1.1, 1.1.1. So if you've ever written an academic paper, you're probably familiar with that whole heading and numbering system, the style set up in Microsoft Word. The data below will not be imported, so this extra information about each requirement. So that's why when I actually attach the Word document to the requirement section, the Word document itself will be attached as well. Okay, so I have all my requirements and sub-requirements in the Word document. It's saved. Or I can go ahead. I won't save because I don't know what change I just made. Now in the requirements section, I simply right-click on a folder. So I'm on the main requirements folder. I can click on any folder. And I have the option to import requirements from Word captions. Okay, I'm going to show you what's going to happen. So when I import it, I'm going to probably receive an error. So why did I receive this error? That's because, remember, I said that it's important that if whatever prefix I'm using for my headings in Word has to be set in the options in Tosca. By default, so I'm going to project options requirements, and you see I have a word heading prefix. Mine was default set to German. So remember, Tricentis, we're sitting in Vienna in Austria right now, and the default here was actually the German heading. So if I were using the German Microsoft Word headings, I would be fine, but I'm using the prefix heading. So that's how it's set in my Word. And so I'm going to have to set that manually here. Oops. Okay. So whichever prefix you're using in your Word document has to be set here. Then I apply those changes. So now Tosca will know which headings, which styles to take. And now if I import requirements from Word captions, you can see it creates a requirement set, and the requirement set comes from the name of my document, and the requirements appear with their sub-requirements as they appeared in the Word document. You can see it shows me that no test case was linked. This is kind of just a placeholder so that I know that no test cases were linked to those requirements yet. Okay. And if I go to the requirement set in the navigation pane, I can see there's an attachment, and that attachment is the Word document with the headings that I imported. So any other information in that Word document I can find in that requirement set. So I won't have to remember where the original document was saved that I got all this information from and then go search for it to find, let's say, descriptions for the requirements or anything like that. Okay? So, the next subject that we discussed was actually just copying and pasting from Excel to requirements. So let me open up an Excel sheet. Okay. So this Excel sheet, hope it's big enough for everyone to see. I'll zoom in a little. Actually contains the same sort of structure. So I have the name of the requirement set here in its own column, then the names of the highest level requirements in their own column. So it's a very similar structure to what I showed you also with the Excel sheet for test case design. So every different level has its own column. So these are the levels of requirements, and each requirement itself actually belongs in its own row. Okay? And important here, I can't copy and paste requirement sets, so I would actually have to, in Tosca, first create the requirement set. So I'll go ahead and create a new requirement set, and I'll call this release candidates 3.10 or something, just because I already have 3.0 there. Then in Excel, I would actually just copy the requirements and all sub-requirements, okay? So I just copy it. And to paste, there's an option here. It's a little gray folder in the context of the mini toolbar. And it says, if I hover over it, create requirement structure from clipboard. Okay. And you can see now it imports them or it pastes them in the same way that the Word headings imported them. And the difference is just that with the Word document, I had an attached file. Obviously here I don't have an attached file because it was copy and paste. And I also had to create the requirement set manually. With the Word document, it created it by taking the name of the file as the name of the requirement set. Okay? But this, as I said, this was now on the requirement set, creating a requirement structure. I can also use this sort of structure for folders. So let's say I would take this whole thing, so I'll copy it. And now on the requirements folder, I have, so on the folder rather than the requirement set, I have the option create folder structure. And now you can see it creates a set of folders rather than requirements, and in each of the folders I could then add requirement sets. So this would be a structural option, and this, as I said, can be taken over to any of the other sections. So if my requirements should be set up with a certain folder structure, that means my test case design should have a similar folder structure. So I'll go ahead and I can choose that same option in all of the different sections. So create folder structure, and it goes ahead and paste that same structure into any of the sections. So I can really use it anywhere. Okay, and modules as well. So I'll just show. Okay, so that's a cool option. So again, for folders or for elements under folders. So every time you find that option with that little gray icon to create an element structure, you just have to make sure that it's creating the type of elements you want. So if I actually wanted requirements and I get the option that I'm creating a folder structure, I know I'm not focused on the right object. So I would want to focus on a requirements set to get that option rather than a folder. Okay? All right. So now that should be simple enough. So copying over the requirements, then I can go ahead and populate the requirements section. Now, let's say, as I mentioned before, I want to create a test case design from an Excel sheet. So I'll close this Excel sheet that I have open. And I'll show you now the one that I used earlier as a sample in my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so here we have a sample application. And the sample application is for creating insurance for automobiles. And I have a couple different worksheets with data for creating an automobile with an Austrian automobile insurance with an Austrian address or an automobile insurance with a German address. You can see this data is put into the template that comes with Tosca. So under the object attribute section, I actually, in each column, put the different levels of attributes. And in each row, I have each individual attribute. Then I have each test case, or in Tosca terms, each instance in its own column, and the corresponding data values for the attributes under the test case that it belongs to. So for test case 1, all data values for this particular test case are in the rows below. Okay. As I mentioned, if you had data in rows instead of columns, so if, for example, you had test case 1, data point 1, data 2, data 3, and then you had test case 2, and they also had their own data points. And so it's not the same format as the Tosca template because we need the data sets or the test cases in columns. All you have to do is copy and paste it with this option to paste transposed. And then you'll see it will paste the test cases in columns with the data below. Okay? So that's the easy, fast way to change the data that you probably have in rows into columns. Okay, so, all right. So it's already set up and ready to be put into or linked to Tosca. So I'll go ahead and close this. I'm going to create a test sheet. So I'll create a test sheet and I'll call it, let's see, Vehicle Insurance Austria. Okay, so I'm going to be using the Austrian test cases. Okay, and I'll focus here on the test sheet. And just 1 second. Sorry, I had a momentary lapse of my memory. I was thinking I was doing the template already. Okay, so this is actually the option where we're copying and pasting, not linking it directly from the Excel sheet. Sorry. I was on the next example already in my mind. So let me open up that Excel sheet one more time. It's just taking a second to open. Okay, sorry. So this is the copy and paste into the test case design, so my apologies. So I'm going to select all with Control A. So I select all the data and I copy it. And now on the test sheet, I will select the option to create element structure from clipboard. Okay, so this is on the test sheet itself. I right click and I select create element structure from clipboard. Okay, and just that simply, it now creates instances, which, as you know, if you're familiar with test case design, are the test cases themselves. So in each column, I get a test case. And it imports the attributes so that the data also gets brought over from the Excel sheet. Okay, and if I have both open so you can see them at the same time, you can easily see where the structure came from, so why the Excel sheet was set up this way. So the attributes get imported like this, and then under each test case or each instance, the relevant data appears. Okay. The one last thing that I said you should do, so now all of the data is pasted into the test case design. You can select the lowest level attributes because remember now each attribute has different instances which are the variations of that attribute. Which means that for make, for example, I should have 6 instances, one for each of the different data options here. So what I can do is I can, for example, select that attribute and then go to convert instances from values. And now it will create the instances. And I can do this obviously in bulk, so I can select them all at once and choose that option. And you can see for each attribute, all of the instances are created. And you could also do this using TQL. So as you know, the different levels of attributes, the higher level attributes are logical attributes because they're just structural. The lower level attributes, which actually contain the data themselves, are physical attributes. So I could do a TQL search that searches for all the lowest level attributes, which are the ones I want to create instances from. So I would search for physical attributes, and then I would in bulk turn them all or convert them all to values or instances. So I'll show you that. Just a quick example. So my TQL search, which if you watched the last MOOC, I'll look for subparts of the section that I'm in. And I'll look for test design attributes. Okay, so I'm looking for attributes in the test design section. And I want all that have the attribute type equal to physical. Okay, so I'm looking in this on this test sheet for all attributes with the attribute type physical. Okay, so these are all now the lowest level attributes. And I should be able to all at once modify them and convert them all to create instances. No. Well, okay, I haven't tried it yet, so But you should be able to, once you've gotten them all here, you should be able to create instances from those values. But, well, I'll have to test that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so once I've found them all, then I can create the instances from here. Okay? All right, so that's actually the simple copy and paste from Excel. And as I said, once I've pasted everything, so I did Control A to select everything, and then I copied it, and I simply pasted into the test case design section using create element structure from clipboard. And as long as my Excel sheet was structured the right way and had all of the data already there, then it simply copies it in to test case design. The important thing here, though, as I mentioned, is that now it is no way linked to that Excel sheet. So if you maintain your data in the Excel sheet, you will have to manually, in some way, modify the test sheet because they're completely separate now. So if you want to change some data in the Excel sheet, you'll have to either recreate the test sheet or go back and duplicate the modifications in the test sheet in the test case design section. Okay, so the last, so now I have a test sheet. In the test case section, I already created some little sample templates, so I have a template here. And remember, once you have a test sheet in Tosca, all you have to do to link it to a template is to drag and drop it onto the template, and it's linked. I got a little message here saying that there's an ambiguous name for a path found. What that means is that there was more. I, by default, have my settings in Tosca, or options in Tosca set, so that when I link a test sheet to my test case template, it tries to match the attributes from the test sheet with test step value names in the template. So it looked, I'll show you, in the test sheet, let's say personal data, I have an attribute called email with some values. And in my test case, somewhere, I have email also, let's see, somewhere in here I have email. Yeah, here I have email, and I have it probably somewhere else as well. And those two test step values, email, basically just give Tosca a bit of a linking problem because it's not really sure which one to, or maybe it's just not exactly written the same way, so it doesn't know exactly how to link it if it's not written exactly the same way. So for whatever reason, it's automatically dragging and dropping. So you can see because make was exactly the same as the name of an attribute here, it linked it to that attribute. So you can see it linked it. So I didn't have to drag and drop my Excel links. This option can be, it's set by default, but you can turn it off. And the reason you would maybe turn it off is, as I said, if you have multiple test step values with the same attribute name, or you don't know exactly where the Excel links will be dropped, maybe things weren't named the same on purpose, then you can turn that option off. And to do that, you would go to Options, so Project Options, and Test Case Design, and you have the option Assign XL Links with Schema Source. So that's the same thing, that it just automatically links the data source. So in this case, the test sheet in Test Case Design, it automatically links the test step values that have the same name. So you can turn that off if you want. Okay. All right. So the other option, so now I've brought all data from the Excel sheet into Tosca, and now I can maintain it and modify it in Tosca. Okay. And to create the test cases, obviously on the template, I will instantiate, and it will create all of the different test cases for me. Now, let's say I want to use this Excel sheet set up exactly the same way, so the exact same Excel sheet as, rather than a test sheet, I want to link it directly to a template. So I have a template here, an empty template with no links here, and I want to link it to the Excel sheet. Sorry, so this is what I was doing before when I, so first we had the copy and paste from Excel, now we link directly from Excel to the template. And when you have a template, so this is just a test case converted to a template, I select the template, so I'm focused on it, and in the ribbon I can click Link Data Source, and it opens this little wizard, and now I provide the path to the Excel sheet, and it will also ask me which worksheet I want to use. So this is for Austria. So from that Excel sheet, I take the Austria worksheet. Okay. And now it's linked. And how do I know it's linked? If I go to the properties of the template, I can see here in the schema path that it linked me directly to that Excel sheet, and it has also the link to the worksheet. Okay. And now, okay, so now if I want to link the values, so I obviously can't drag and drop from Excel like I can from a test sheet, but if I now use the formula XL, because it's linked to the test sheet and it's in the right format, or to the Excel sheet, it finds the different levels of attributes just like it structured them as if it was a test sheet. So, for example, for make, I can take vehicle data, I press tab, I have to push dot myself manually, so a period or a dot, and that will now bring up the next level of attributes. And this is how you can now create the Excel links for the values from your test sheet. Okay, so vehicle data, make, I press tab and I close it, and now that value is linked from the Excel sheet. So for each appropriate test case, the appropriate data point will be chosen. So I'll just, with just this one little example, I'll see if I can instantiate the template. Okay, so now I have template instances. So for each test case, each one of these instances is now a test case that came directly from the test sheet, from the Excel sheet. And the value for makes, so in the first one it's Audi, in the second one it's BMW, in the third one Chevrolet. Okay, so you can see that it's doing just the same as test case design would do, but now I have to maintain my data in the Excel sheet. Okay, you can also add conditions. So just like with test case design, but with test case design, you drag and drop the test sheet attributes to create conditions. With the Excel sheet, you actually have to manually create them. Let's say, in the template, I'm just making one up right now, so let's say I want to run this test step folder only if I have a BMW for whatever reason, I don't know, since we already saw this vehicle.make. So what I would do is put one of these single quotation marks, like an apostrophe up there. I guess it's an apostrophe, not a single quotation mark. And then I type the name of the first level attribute, then the second level attribute, and so on. Close the apostrophe, and then I just set it equal to or not equal to, so not equal to whatever, BMW. Okay, so actually this you have to do manually, but it looks exactly the same as conditions using test case design. The only thing here is that with test case design, you can specify instance position or instance character. So use this step only when the instance is valid or invalid or straight through or boundary. Obviously, you can't do that when it's an Excel sheet as a data source, reason being that you can't define these different positions in the Excel sheet. So you need the test sheet for that. Okay, but otherwise it runs just the same as a normal template, and it remains linked to that sheet. Okay, so that's it from my side. I saw there were a lot of questions coming in, so maybe we'll just take a quick second to see which questions have come in, and then try to get a few of those answered that we haven't been able to answer during the session. So just be patient for one moment while I talk to Mark to see what questions have come in. Okay, so I'll do one at a time. One of the questions that came in is if I could re-demonstrate the create element structure from the clipboard, copying Excel to test case design. So I'll do that quickly because, yes, sorry, I was one example ahead and I definitely skipped around with that demonstration. So let me show you that one more time. So we have the Excel sheet set up. So this is actually the template that comes from Tricentis. Obviously, you can keep adding as many columns as you want for the test cases. Then you simply Control A, or select all, however you want to do it. So I've selected all the data in my template. And I copy. Okay, so I'm copying it. It's in the clipboard. Now, in the test case design section, I'll say Excel to test case design. So I created a test sheet, and on the test sheet, I select. So it's I right-click, and on the little ellipsis here, or let me see if it's, oh, you can also select it from the ribbon at the top. So create object, element structure from clipboard, or use the shortcut Control and E. So there's 3 different ways to do it. So either from create object, element structure from clipboard, or right-click, ellipsis, element structure from clipboard, and that's it. And you put, it was in the clipboard. Basically, that was like paste, and now all the data is imported. And the last thing that I would want to do is just so select the lowest level attributes or the physical attributes, and convert or create instances from them, so that in each lowest level attribute, I also have the instances. Okay, so I would actually want to do that for every level. Okay, and it just turns the data into instances. Okay. All right, let me look for some more questions. Just one moment. Okay, TQL is Tosca query language. That's the search language in Tosca that you can use to find objects. We actually did a MOOC on this, I think 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. So you can actually find that on our website. So if you go to tricentis.com/academy, there should be a MOOCs tab, and you can go there and you can watch the entire MOOC about TQL. Basically, when you go to search in a particular section, It's an entire language that you can use, and you can look for any object in Tosca, and you can look that it meets certain conditions, so you can create a set of results. Yeah, so that's what Tosca query language is. Okay. Okay, some questions about the test case design itself. So obviously I used a lot of terms that use the assumption that you're familiar with test case design. If you're not, then just, obviously I don't have time now to do an entire course on test case design. I think we will have one coming up about data-driven testing, which will cover a lot of the theory about how test case design is structured and what the different elements are. Basically, once we've brought all the data and the test cases into test case design so that we can modify them and maintain them here, we will be able to, like, let's say, change the test cases that already exist or add new test cases on. And creating instances makes it just easier to do this, because now once, let's see, if I delete the instances for make, each individual value that was there, well, that didn't, so it said Audi, BMW, they were just standalone values. When I have instances, I actually have now the selection of all the different options for that attribute. Okay, and when I create more test cases, it makes it easier to select the different options or combinations of options I want for my different test cases. Along with that, someone asked what instantiation is for templates. Instantiation means that I have a template, and the template has the conditions and the values necessary for all of those test cases. Okay? So instead of saying BMW here or Audi here, I link it to the attribute, and every instance from that attribute will be used in the appropriate test case when I instantiate. So instantiating means turn this link, turn the template into a set of test cases, and the number of test cases comes from the test sheet, so it would create 6 test cases. Okay, so you see I get 6 test cases, and then during instantiation, those values, instead of a link, actually get brought over one by one into the corresponding test case. Okay, so that's the purpose of instantiation. So kind of using one template to link all the values and create all combinations and conditions for when each value should be used. And instantiation actually then populates all the test cases from the test sheet with those values. Okay, one moment while I look for a couple more questions. Okay, if you make changes to Tosca or Excel, then it's so let's say I change the template. So I change a value here, or so let's say, yeah, I make this click instead of X. My computer's going a little bit slow. Or I change one of the values here. So I change, let's say, this make to something totally new, like, what's another car make?
Ford.
Okay, Ford. Oh, it's already there. I don't know. Toyota.
Toyota.
Okay, now I've made a change, and in order to update those changes to my instances, I just go to this whole folder which contains all of those test cases with the values in them, and I select reinstantiate. And I can do that with the one that's linked to test case design, or the one that's linked to Excel. So whichever one it's linked to, wherever the data is coming from, wherever the data is coming from, and whichever the test case template is linked to, I would just select reinstantiate, and I may have put some invalid things here, but nope. So I reinstantiate, and now it updates, or that wasn't the one. So instantiate. So that was the one linked to the Excel sheet. This is the one linked to test case design. And did it not? Sorry. That was the one I just created, so it wasn't the one that was linked. So this is the one that was originally linked to this template. So I had Audi in the first one. I've made a change so I can reinstantiate. And now it updates it to Toyota, okay? And it's the same if I change something in Excel. I just reinstantiate the whole set of test cases. Okay, one more second. Okay, last question. So there was the question, let's see. So I used the Excel links with the template link to Excel, and I didn't show the creation of them when linking to test case design. So mine were automatically linked from test case design because I had that option on that I showed you. If I didn't, so using the same example as linking to Excel, I would just drag and drop that attribute. So I'm taking the make attribute and dropping it into the test set value, and it creates the link, okay? So the Excel link is supported whether I'm, whichever data source I'm using, Excel itself or a test sheet from test case design. Okay, I think those are all the questions we actually have time for today, so thank you guys so much. I'll hand over to Mark, and we'll finish up.
Okay, lovely people. Our next webinar will be on recovery scenarios next week, April 26th at 10 a.m. and then the next day on the 27th at 5:30 p.m. or for us 17:30. We would love to hear any feedback that you have, and thank you for coming to our entire webinar. We would love to give you a free voucher code for our free AS1 course. So if you go to our website, they should give you a link. They should give you the option to type in a voucher code, and it should give you the free AS1, and then it'll give you the entire process that you go through for that. Here it is again on our Tricentis Academy website. If you go to Web Shop, there's Redeem Company Voucher. Click on that, type in the voucher code that you've just received, and then you're on your way to having a free AS1 course. If you have any support questions, please contact support@tricentis.com. If you have any feedback about our trainings, please contact us at academy@tricentis.com. And you can see the links to our other support areas, whether it be our knowledge base or our support manuals. We also have a Tricentis YouTube channel that we upload videos to for small tidbits of beautiful information. Thank you for coming to our MOOC, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.